back in 2012, my mom passed away. And so in one of the first experiences with ayahuasca, I met my mom again. And it was clear that she's around. She's here. She's with me. There's so much more that we can't even explain, that we can't even comprehend, that our limited mind cannot actually understand, but it is felt. When you realize that your mind is infinite and you, in fact, can decide how you perceive reality based on which thoughts you choose and which beliefs you choose, that changes the game. So that's when things really start changing.
Ruta, thank you for coming back. Welcome back, in fact, to Success Matters. You were guest number 3 for me when I first started this podcast, and I'm now over 50 episodes in. And
congratulations!
Thank you very much for that. I've been following your journey since long before we actually recorded the session. But in the last 2.5 years since we last spoke, you've had quite a massive transformation in your own life and the way in which things have worked. So I thought it'd be great to get you back on, because part of this is how we go on a journey in life. And let's start with your decision to move to Brazil almost overnight. Like how did you come to that decision? How did you decide, okay, that's it, I'm off, and a drop of a hat, off you went?
That's a great question. And by the way, thank you so much for inviting me back on Success Matters. It's a great honor to be back here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, that was a plot twist in my journey. I can tell you that. So basically, at the time, I lived in Portugal for 2.5 years. And I lived in this tiny village, which was in the middle of nowhere, isolated, with less than 100 people living in that tiny village. And the thing is that Portugal is a very seasonal place. Specifically, that area is a very seasonal place. And the time of the summer season was approaching. And I was told by the landlord that I will not be able to continue renting the place where I was living for 2.5 years. And basically I was like, okay, so what do I do? Because summer season is summer season in Portugal everywhere. So I didn't have a home for 5 months at least.
Right.
So I was like, well, so what do? I don't want to go back to Lithuania because it's not really where I thrive and I feel great. I didn't feel like traveling a lot from place to place, like kind of living a nomadic lifestyle. But the thing is that a friend of mine lived in Brazil in the jungle. And it wasn't a very close friend. I knew him a little bit. I knew that he was also very much in personal development and spirituality and stuff like that. And we were having these regular conversations and really deep, wonderful, powerful conversations. And one day he just dropped this question, why don't you come and visit me in Brazil? And I thought, well, why would I? Because it was a friend, but it wasn't that close of a friend, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Somehow my first impression was like, no, it doesn't make any sense. But then he asked me, does it actually excite you to go to the jungle? Is that something that you think would be a great experience in your lifetime? And the answer was absolutely yes.
Yeah.
There's no question about that. And so literally overnight, I decided to book the flights. And 5 days later, I was sitting on the plane. And the idea behind was that maybe I will stay there 3 weeks. Maybe I will stay there 3 months. Maybe I will stay there for way longer.
Mm-hmm.
And guess what? 14 months later, I was still there.
Oh, wow. 14 months. I knew you'd been there for a while. I thought it was 6 months, but 14 months. Wow, that's a long time.
Yeah, and it was one of the most incredible experiences of my life. And so, you know, when all of that unfolded, I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know why I'm going there. I didn't know what I was going to find, who I was going to become, but who I became as a result of living in the jungle, immersed in the jungle, like the proper jungle, in Brazil, what I found was myself. I felt like I was stripped from all of the conditioning, from all of the expectations, from all of the societal, you know, expectations and trying to force my business to be a certain way and creating content a certain way. I was literally left with nothing in a sense. I was like, okay, so I just come with one hand luggage, not even a
All right.
proper suitcase, check-in suitcase. I came with one hand luggage and I spent 14 months just immersing myself in nature, being with myself, living with 3 dogs, with a dear friend. Another friend then came in, and it was kind of like a co-living situation, but at the same time, also very much a spiritual journey. It was a journey of growth. It was a journey of connecting with higher realms of higher self.
Okay.
And basically, I learned what success means on a frequency level. So a lot of people are talking about success as this thing that you achieve on paper. But what I learned there is that success is a frequency. It's how you feel. It's who you become. It's whether or not you have a great quality of life. And those kind of things were not really in my sphere before going to Brazil. And suddenly I learned on a way deeper level what it actually means to feel successful, to feel happy, to feel peaceful, to feel alive. And so it just made me a completely different person.
So which part of Brazil was this in, and what was the jungle experience like? I mean, I'm assuming you weren't living in like a tent or a camp or something. It was relatively comfortable in terms of the accommodation, but outside of that, what was the rest of the experience like?
Yeah. So the location, it was in Bahia region in
Hmm.
Brazil, and that is um the jungle is the Atlantic rainforest. And that area is where I lived was very close to the Atlantic Ocean. And the rainforest is very much a jungle. So when you go to the deep jungle, it's a pretty deep jungle. And I have seen, snakes eating a rat or stuff, things like
Right.
this, like the typical jungle things. And what I experienced, something that I have never experienced before, is the abundance of nature. And you feel so safe. A lot of people think when they think about Brazil, they think that it's unsafe, that there are bad people, but Bahia as a region is very safe. And where I lived, all I could see around me was abundance and beauty and friendly faces and smiles and happy people who barely had anything. So I was going on my hikes and I was passing by these sheds where people were living with barely anything, barely any electricity, even.
Yeah.
And they were just the happiest people on the planet. And I felt safe somehow in this environment. And it was so beautiful to see how nature blends with people, with humans, and how it all works. And there was abundance of water because it's a rainforest. So
Yeah.
there's never lack. There's fruits and vegetables growing naturally. There are all these beautiful birds and animals all around. And so what I the contrast between Portugal, which was a very scarce environment because it's very especially in summertime, it gets very dry.
Yeah.
So the contrast was massive. Suddenly from scarcity, I experienced this massive wild abundance. And so that abundance was kind of reflecting back to me that it's a matter of perception also. So, yes, it's a choice how we live, where we live, what kind of environment we live in, but also it's very much a choice how we choose to feel. Do we choose to feel like we're in scarcity, or do we choose to feel that we're in abundance? And that's exactly what I learned from people who were living in those sheds.
Right. Yeah. And oftentimes when you go to the developing world, you see people who've got pretty much nothing, right, other than a roof over their head, but they are living a life of joy. And, this, you can see joy in their face. And we often forget that in the developed world, that there is joy to be found in, as you say, the jungle, right? In a tree, in parrots, or whatever it is around. And so it's so easy to lose sight of that, I think.
Exactly. And I think the main key is really to find as many things as you possibly can to be grateful for.
Mhm.
Like basically it's an attitude shift. Do you see that there is plenty to be grateful for? The people that you love, your family members, your friends, your peers, your home, the electricity, the internet. Like when you asked what was the life there in the jungle, I lived quite comfortably, but at the same time, well, electricity was a very it wasn't something I could count on, let's put it this way. So
Yes.
whenever there was something going on with the weather, sometimes even on a sunny day, there was a shortage. And suddenly there is no electricity, suddenly there is no internet anymore. I can't post my content on social media. I can't have a call with my client. So it was interrupting. And yet there's still so much to be grateful for.
Mm.
And so it kind of trained my brain to focus on the right things, because I could easily have slipped into complaining about, but I can't count on it. It's unreliable. It's annoying. But it really tested my patience, and it stretched my patience so far so that I can actually find so many reasons to be grateful for exactly what I'm experiencing. That
Mhm.
sometimes even if I didn't have access to internet for maybe a whole day, for example, in that whole day, I could connect with nature deeper, or with myself, or with people around me, or, like there's always this darkness and light. There's always this duality, and you can always choose in balance.
That's right. Yeah, one thing you have control of is your choice, right, of how you respond to something, and that's kind of a really important thing to remind yourself. You said that the experience was also quite spiritual. So, in what way was it spiritual and taking you to a different level?
Well, that is something that a lot of people probably have some skepticism about, and are not necessarily, how do I put it, are maybe not open to it. So I experienced ayahuasca, the psychedelic medicine
Okay.
that is coming from the rainforest. So
Hmm.
basically, it comes from that region,
Yeah.
from South America. And so I had the privilege to experience ayahuasca several times.
Okay.
And what it did to me is that it showed me what I'm here to do on this planet, something that I already knew to some extent, but it became so much clearer of what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, who I am, what I'm here to do. And so, why it's spiritual is because prior to these experiences, I was very much in my head. I
Okay.
was a very rational person. I was a very mental person. And for me, everything was logic based. Everything is um, something to calculate, kind of mathematical, linear, very linear. And it was really hard for me to believe and to actually really fully trust, fully trust that there's something more. Fully trust that I am not alone in this. Fully trust that no matter how scary something is, but if I feel the call to do it, I'll be fine. I'll
Mhm.
be safe. And so, what it showed me, well, first of all, probably I shared this in the last episode, is that back in 2012, my mom passed away.
Yeah.
And so, in one of the first experiences with ayahuasca, I met my mom again. And it was clear that she's around. She's here. She's with me. And it was no longer this mental concept that I told myself that, oh, well, probably she can see me. I don't really know. but it became crystal clear that that is the case. And so it gave me this connection to something way deeper, and it gave me also more purpose and more meaning in life,
Mm-hmm.
because suddenly it's not all what we see in plain sight, but there's also this deep feeling and even conviction that there is so much more that we can't even explain, that we can't even comprehend, that our limited mind cannot actually understand, but it is felt.
Yeah.
And so that's what really happened in Brazil, in the jungle, in those 14 months. So obviously it's not just about ayahuasca. It's more about the overall experience that I had there, that everything was kind of contributing to me feeling deeper and deeper connected to higher realms, to even understanding what quantum physics is all about.
Yeah.
Because quantum physics is talking about the same thing, about higher realms and, higher intelligence, but then from scientific point of view. And spirituality is the same from a different point of view.
Mm.
So it just gave me far more uh, trust in this path, that we are souls living in a human body doing some great things. And how exciting is that?
Mm. Yeah. So for someone who doesn't have access to ayahuasca and the rainforest and the like, how could they find this higher level, and how do you help them find that higher level?
That's a great question. So I would say the first step is really being open to the idea that this mind is limited.
Mhm.
This mind is not it all. And the thing is that a lot of people believe that their thoughts are what define them. But the thoughts don't define you. Your thoughts are just clouds, and you can actually pick and choose which ones are in alignment with who you really are, that feel resonant, and which ones are just stories from your past, are just traumatic experiences with your maybe parents, with your caregivers, with your teachers, with your friends, peers, etc. So basically, when you realize that your mind is infinite and you, in fact, can decide how you perceive reality based on which thoughts you choose and which beliefs you choose, that changes the game. So that's when things really start changing. And then obviously, because not everyone has access to ayahuasca, or not even access, maybe a lot of people don't even want to experience something like this because it is scary. It actually is. A lot of people are scared of, the unknown, because that's
Mm.
what ayahuasca does. You are basically surrendering to whatever is going to happen once you're in that ritual, in that experience.
Right.
And so I would say, apart from understanding that thoughts don't define you, also just looking for evidence that it's not all just 3D reality.
Mm-hmm.
There are emotions, there are energies. We feel each other,
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
We don't just see each other, we don't just hear each other, we feel each other. And that in itself is evidence that there is so much more out there. And
Mm.
so when you start seeing it this way, when you start opening your mind to all of this, you start receiving more and more information that confirms this. And you
Yeah.
start feeling more and more connected, and you start also acting differently. And that's when you find even more gratitude, even more sensations of abundance, and feeling like, oh my God, this is what feeling truly alive really means. It's not just, I woke up in the morning, I did my job, I spent some time with my family, and I went to sleep after
Yeah.
watching TV for 2 hours. That's not just that.
Yeah.
There's much more.
Yeah. It's you posted recently on LinkedIn I'm going to mess up the quote here, but if you live every day the same for 75 years, you've not lived a life, or was to that effect, right? And that's it.
Exactly.
So what, as you were talking now, I was reminded of some of the concepts from neuro-linguistic programming. People have a map of the world, and your map of the world and my map of the world are different based on our experiences, but also based on how our own brain and our body filters out so much that's coming our way. And, it filters it out based, as you said, on potentially past experiences or our thoughts or what we believe to be true, when really something else could be the truth of that. So are there exercises that people could do that would help them to unlock that mind, if you like, and really experience that broader capability that we have?
I would say the probably the easiest exercise that I would always recommend to start with is ask as many times why as you need to get to the root, get to the very bottom of why I believe this way.
Yeah.
Why do I think this? Oh, it's because my dad always spoke this way. And why do I believe that that's true? Oh, because XYZ. And then you basically keep on asking yourself, why? And then you realize, actually, I don't even need this anymore. And then you can start asking yourself, okay, so what is a different belief that would help me to move forward in life, that would help me to feel better, that would help me to find more courage, that would help me to move in the direction of my dreams. So once you found the root cause, then you can actually start building something different. You have found why it doesn't work, why actually this belief is not yours. These thoughts are not even yours. It doesn't even make sense. It's not really helpful. It's not beneficial. And now, because you have disqualified it, you can start building your new beliefs. And it's like, okay, so if I want to go in the direction of my dreams, what would be the first step that I can take? Even the baby step, the tiniest baby step that will help me. Oh, maybe I need to do some research on the topic that I don't know, that I'm working on, about relationships or about business or about whatever. So it's kind of like first it's demolishing and then it's building.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So asking, I think some people call it the 7 whys or 5 whys. Asking why until you cannot answer that question any further, and getting to the root of that. When you decided you're now back in Portugal, so what was the decision point to move back to Portugal?
I missed being in civilization.
Okay.
I'm very much a civilized person who is like, okay, it was fun. It was an amazing experience in life, and I will never ever forget that. And I will always be grateful for it. And it will always, like, basically it left such a deep imprint in my heart that not only that I will remember always like what it meant and who I became as a result of being there, but I will also go back to the jungle
Hmm.
whenever I feel the call to do so. But what I realized is that I wanted to be closer to the world.
Hmm.
I wanted to be closer to humans. And you see, it wasn't even with jungle only, because as I said earlier, I lived in a tiny village in Portugal for 2.5 years before that. So basically, I lived nearly 4 years in total in isolation, in a sense. So I was very active online, but offline, I was extremely selective and intentional who I surrounded myself with, who I was hanging out with, where I was going, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And what I realized, what I came down to is that I wanted to put myself out there into the world again and to actually start meeting people in real life far more, and also to be in a location which enabled me to travel easily for work, for personal development
Hmm.
programs or anything like that whenever I needed to, or even to go back and visit my family back in Lithuania.
Yeah.
Because when you live in the middle of nowhere in Brazil, like
The
it
mission.
takes more than an entire day to, get from door to door back in with my family.
Yeah.
So basically, I feel like my life was, I can see certain stages in life when I was in the corporate world, and then I needed to be in this isolation, physical isolation, to really clean everything from my sphere, from my world, and to be extremely intentional. And then I was like, okay, now I'm ready to go out there and do awesome things.
Right. Yeah. Okay. And that makes perfect sense. I think, particularly, if you'd grown up in the jungle, you might miss the jungle, and therefore that would be the thing that draws you back. But let's face it, we've all pretty much grown up in the developed world and lived in cities and towns, and so the draw, to be we are social creatures at the end of the day, right? So
Um,
have that social element is really important. So you are a success mentor, and this is Success Matters, so it's a perfect combination here. What does it mean to be a success mentor?
Oh, that's a great question. I love that. Um, what it means is that I realize that a lot of people are calling themselves coaches and mentors and all sorts of different words. And I was like, okay, for me, my brand has always been redefining success. Since 2019, it just landed that redefining success is all I'm about. The How I started this journey to begin with, probably we spoke about it in our first conversation. It was because I realized that a lot of people are living a lie, and they are not exactly how they would like things to be.
Yeah.
Like they're somehow just going with the flow. And
Hmm.
then I thought, wait a second, it's all about redefining success. And so what I realized recently, actually, in the beginning of this year in 2025, is that even in today's world, even if there's so much information about personal development, emotional intelligence, spirituality, how to navigate your emotions, how to really live a happy life, a peaceful life, a more aligned life, it's still not the norm. And what I realized is that even though there's so much information about how important this is, and there are so many advocates of this philosophy that it's important to align everything, and that success is not just the money and not just stuff on paper and not just the things that you were told, but somehow companies are still not including these kind of metrics like emotional intelligence or alignment or whether or not you actually like what you do in your work. A lot of people still are unaware of any of this work. Like, let me tell you, my family still until today does not understand anything that I do.
Yeah. Another feeling.
I, for them, it's like, ah, well, she's just, like a psychologist or something.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
that's how they explain it. And so essentially what I came down to is that I want to redefine the way success is seen on a larger scale, so that we have these kind of conversations about what success really means. Success matters, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. So that's the whole idea behind, is that I want to mentor people and organizations to start having a different approach, which is far more holistic, so that people actually don't shy away from sharing that, you know what, money actually didn't bring me the feeling. It didn't bring me the feeling of like, oh wow, now I feel safe. I
Yeah.
can tell you so many wildly successful rich people still feel unsafe
Mm.
because they think, well, what if I lose all of my millions tomorrow?
Yeah.
So, again, it's a frequency. Feeling wealthy, feeling rich, feeling safe, feeling abundant, feeling happy, all of these things are not something that you can put in a box or send to your bank account.
Mm.
It's a feeling. And so that's what success mentoring is all about in my case. And it doesn't mean that it's bad in any shape or form to desire some great, amazing things that have to do with material stuff
Yeah.
or being successful in a typical way. But my approach and philosophy is that it's not exclusive.
Yes.
You can actually have, you can be wildly wealthy in a monetary sense and be extremely fulfilled and happy and feel amazing in your own skin.
Mm, yeah. And to an extent, you can be very wealthy in feeling that really confident in yourself in your own skin, even if the monetary wealth isn't there, right? Which is the
Yes.
other side of it, which is what I explore on this podcast is, success means so many different things to different people. And, um, there are people who are doing charitable work, and charitable work is the thing that gives them that real feeling of success, but they're not monetarily, not wealthy, right? But they are rich in what they do and rich in that feeling and outcomes that they're driving for other people.
I love that you say that because that is where it all begins. That richness that you feel is like, you know what? I don't need anything. This is how I felt in Brazil, honestly. Like I said, I came with one hand luggage.
Yeah.
I could fit my entire life in one hand luggage. And I felt so rich. I was like, oh my God, all these people who are stressed and working for their millions and they're working, I don't know, like 15, 16, 17 hours a day, and I just live in this beauty.
Yeah.
How is that even comparable?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. That's very true. So within my podcast, I ask a previous guest for a question for my next guest. And my previous guest asked this question, which you probably have thoughts around. I'm going to read it out. So the question is, if you're at your funeral, what would you want your legacy to be?
Mm. It reminds me of one exercise that I actually help my clients, and I ask them to do this exercise.
Yeah.
And what I ask them to do is to imagine their funeral.
Hmm.
And I literally ask them to imagine the atmosphere, the music, the people, what the people are talking about, like what's the feeling in the funeral. And I always had this feeling that there will be a lot of people in my funeral, and all of them will be like, oh my God, my life has turned around when I came across Ruta's work. I'm so much happier. I'm so much more aligned. I quit my job. I started my own business, or I changed my career path, or I decided to travel the world and I sold my house and I packed my backpack and I decided to, travel the entire world, or I don't know, I ended this relationship that wasn't working for 15 years and I met the love of my life the next year. Like that's what I envision in my
Yeah.
funeral.
That would be brilliant, right? Just imagine if every single person whose life you've touched uh, turned up at your funeral and had that positive thing to say about you. And often it's not just those people whose lives you've touched, it's the ripple effect as well, right? The people around them and the people around them that have had a big impact. So yeah, it's a great answer. Thank you for
The
that.
thing is, the thing is for me, it's not even about me somehow. Like when I
Yeah, yeah,
imagine the funeral, when people are having those conversations, I feel like they wouldn't even talk about me as much. For me, it would be so exciting to observe how everyone is just excited about their own lives and
hmm
they're talking about how incredible life is.
yeah, yeah. You'd kind of like be your spirit would be looking down on these people talking about you and all the great impact you've had. So
Totally.
yeah,
What
that's
about you? I'm curious also. What would you say? How would you answer that question?
oh yeah. So mine actually is a very similar kind of answer that you know I've been on a journey myself over the last few years, and part of the reason I set up Success Matters was because I came from a commercial background. I worked in sales for many, many years, and in sales, you're judged by the number. The sales number is the thing that everyone counts. But I know that there's much more to life than just the sales number. And part of what I do now is actually thinking about how I can serve others. And so, Success Matters is part of that. Hopefully people will listen to this, they'll take something from it. If we're in this conversation, we're changing one person's outlook on life, then that's been a success for me. I work I'm a chairman of a charity board, and work there to help kids develop and change things. And I've got a day job as well, in which I'm coaching people, both within my organization but externally as well, to help them have a change in life. And so for me, it is very similar. That it's not about me; it's about what's the legacy that I've left with other people. What have they changed? How have they changed? Whether it's in a work context and they're now working in a different fashion, doing something differently, or it's in I didn't recognize that in myself. I'm able to do more. I've opened up my brain. So that's a long answer to your question, but that's kind of where my thoughts are at.
That's beautiful. And may I ask one more question?
Of course.
I'm curious. So when it comes to success, and you said that in your case, you were feeling like a number, because as a salesperson, that's kind of all that matters and counts. So as I was speaking earlier about being a success mentor and why I do that, to kind of normalize a different definition of success, so that it's not just about the metrics. How would you say the normalizing that would change your experience specifically?
When you say normalizing that, it's not just about the metric.
Yes.
Oh, that's a deep question, actually, Ruta. I've always believed in the spirituality aspect of things, not necessarily a religious perspective, but what you said earlier, that we are connected as people, and you can often, if someone's staring at you from behind, you feel it, right? Even though you can't see them, you can feel them. So there is that connection there. And so for me, having a world where we're all understanding each other and connecting together is really what I would like to see as normalizing, as opposed to some people have everything, some people have nothing, some people look down on others, there's judgment, there's, certain aspects of rules, if you like, that people have. Strip all that away. Strip all that away, and let's just live as humans together in you might call a utopian world. That's ideally where I would like to see things.
Yeah, beautiful. Building real relationships.
Yeah, building real, deep, meaningful, spiritual relationships. With people.
Right.
So we're towards the top of our time now. Unfortunately, it's been a really great conversation. If people want to get in contact with you, Ruta, how best should they do so?
The best is to go to my website, which is redefiningsuccess.co.uk. So for your audience, specifically in the UK, I think that works very well. Other than that, you can also find me on social media. So on LinkedIn, you will find me as Ruta Stasiunaite, and on Instagram as well as Ruta.Stasiunaite. So, but the best place is redefiningsuccess.co.uk, and then you will find everything there.
Perfect. Okay, great. Well, it's been a fascinating conversation. We could probably talk for another 2 hours, but we have a limited set of time. So thank you very much for coming back to Success Matters.
Thank you so much, and all the best with your episodes and your podcast. I'm so excited for 100.
No, I'm looking forward to it. And probably I'll have you back for the 100th episode.
That would be a great pleasure. Thank you.
To find your success, contact me at info@successmatterscoaching.com. That's info@successmatterscoaching.com.